Hey, everybody. Guess what? It's time for another episode of the Flagship podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and proud Tampa Catholic graduate, the one and only Eric Henry. E. Henry, how you doing?
It is a beautiful Tuesday afternoon here in Austin, Texas. Looking forward to another great week here around the 40 acres, Chip Brown, and obviously an opportunity for the Longhorns to bounce back after what ended up being a rather disappointing night at DKR.
Yeah. It was a disappointing night, but it was an electric night. It was unbelievable. I mean, the crowd, the recruits, if you follow us over on horns247.com, and if you don't, well, by all means, grab yourself an annual membership at horns247.com so that you are in the know on all the scoop involving the team, the recruiting, and you get VIP access to every team site on the preeminent 24/7 Sports Network. All right. So, and please like and subscribe to the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. That would help. We appreciate that as well. All right, Eric. So we're picking up the pieces from the Georgia loss, and obviously Texas, which has a very tricky road trip this week to now number 25 Vanderbilt, which is 5-2 overall and 2-1 in conference play, just like Texas. Obviously, the most pressing list, or the most pressing item at the top of Texas's priority list of things to fix, is the quarterback situation. And you and I talked about this a little bit in our Take Two column that is up at horns247.com. But let's follow up a little bit with that, because there's so much talk about Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning. What should Steve Sarkisian do? And I said I would sit them down together yesterday and say, hey, Quinn, I'm not seeing, if I need you to get back to being Quinn Ewers. I need you to get back to seeing everything that you were seeing against Michigan, and you're getting the ball out, stepping up in the pocket. If I'm not seeing that, I'm going to assume you're more injured than you're telling me, and I'm going to put Arch Manning into the game and give you, after the bye week, you'll be rested, ready to go, and you'll be back in the starting lineup. We good? Okay. Ready, break. And don't say another thing. Everybody just go prep for the game, do their thing. What say you, Eric Henry?
Chip, I love that approach, but as we all know, quarterback, it's one of the most fragile positions in all of sports. And I don't mean that as a pejorative. I just mean it as a reality. It's like being a pitcher. It's like being a golfer. It's so much of playing quarterback is wrapped up in mental and psyche. And again, I think just from a black and white perspective, what you said is an excellent plan to lay out. But what that plan doesn't account for is how each player or players will react to that, and what happens with the variables of how things play out on the field. Chip, this is what I kind of took away from Saturday. Steve Sarkisian's explanation in the halftime interview was that he wanted to sit Quinn down to give him an opportunity to kind of just slow things down a little bit, it's kind of get himself recalibrated. And also he said in relation to Arch Manning, give the offense a spark. You and I both were at the post game, and Steve Sarkisian reiterated his reasoning for sitting down Quinn Ewers. Just needed to, his eyes need to see some things, kind of settle him down. I asked Quinn Ewers, it was the second question I was asked to him. I said, Quinn, did you feel that you needed kind of some time away from the field just to recalibrate? And Quinn said, well, I guess I did. And I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. And I'm sure, Chip, everything that you laid out and everything Steve Sarkisian laid out, he has gone into greater detail with Quinn Ewers to why he made that decision. But I just revert back to the psyche, right? And if you can't quite understand why something happened, it could lead, in my opinion, to some struggles. So for Texas fans' sake, for the sake of this football team, it has to be the hope that Quinn Ewers, now as we're taping this on Tuesday, October 22nd, 3 days removed from the brief benching, understands why Steve Sarkisian made that move. Because if deep down in Quinn Ewers' heart, he doesn't understand why that move was made, Chip, how many times have we heard Quinn Ewers say, and quite frankly, Steve Sarkisian say, part of what's made their relationship grow, what's helped them bond, what's made it so great is the trust that each of the men have in each other, and that Quinn doesn't have to look behind his shoulder and say, I'm not going to pull you, right? And we all know what the reaction was on the Zoom last week when Steve Sarkisian was asked, what would it take to pull Quinn Ewers? And Steve, vehemently, just emphatically dismissed the question as being ridiculous. It would be foolish, Chip, of us to think that Quinn Ewers didn't at least catch wind of that, right? When you have that kind of, my coach has my back, and then something seemingly kind of different happens again. I just really hope that Quinn has a fundamental understanding. Steve Sarkisian spoke with him, and Quinn is on board, understands why that move happened. Because again, if you don't fully grasp it, then I feel like the biggest fear for me, Chip, is that you have a quarterback who's playing with one eye behind his back and isn't quite sure what's going to happen to him if he makes a mistake out there, Chip.
And that your issues are either physical or mental. And at this stage of the game, third-year starter, been in big games, played great in big games, has had some tough losses back in 2022. Now he's had one here in 2024, but didn't, he said after the Oklahoma game, I need to play better. I'd like to say it's rust, but I practiced for 2 weeks. Those throws, I had to make them. That's on me. Well, then a week later, he's not stepping up in the pocket. He's missing open receiver. He's not even seeing the open receivers, or he sees them and he's not throwing it. He was off. The timing was off. The feel was off. And so then the question is, okay, well, if it's not the injury, what is it? Is it the hits he's taking from Georgia? Is it coming back after seeing Arch excel? What is it? Because one of the things I thought was really amazing, what he said at SEC Media Days, is I'm not trying to impress anybody except God in my relationship with Jesus. That's all I need. And I was like, man, that's powerful, because that's kind of what we heard from Scotty Scheffler after winning the Masters. He's like, I'm good with my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, so it doesn't matter to me if I make the putt or not. I know where my place is. Okay, that's powerful stuff. Strong faith. And now we're seeing something different. And I get it. It's 18 to 22 years old. Quinn Ewers has a lot of high-profile commercials going. They played the deputy right before the game, where he's like, we don't need any backup. Even if he has great hair and famous relatives. I mean,
I know you love that commercial, Chip.
I love it because Ewers is deadpan brilliant in that. And even Brian Bosworth is like, I think we're talking about two different things here. It's great. It's clever. It was well written, everything. But now we're kind of off the grid because he had the game to come back from the rust. And you and I were talking about this yesterday. I've been kind of watching Derek Carr's return for the Saints from an oblique. It's literally right on the same timetable as Quinn. And so, okay, this is the week then, Eric. You got the wake-up call. Now you know your coach will sub for you for poor performance. Quinn was a little like he was definitely, I mean, I want your opinion on this, but in the
Yeah.
post-game interviews, he was a little stunned. And someone asked, what'd you think about going back into the game? He said, I thought it was good because that's what I feel like I was put on earth to do, is play quarterback. So, what's your sense of that and where he is from a mental frame of mind?
You see, Chip, and you know me, right? We've done this now for a year and a half. I hate to psychoanalyze these guys. However, in this case, and I'm not, putting cold water in the question, I'm going to answer it. It would be easier to answer, and I'm not criticizing anyone who made the decision, whether that was Steve Sarkisian, Texas Comms. We've been in this game long enough to know, Chip, it was Steve Sarkisian. For Quinn Ewers not to address the media yesterday, right? But it would have been a little easier to kind of gauge where Quinn's frame of mind is had we heard from him on Monday. The only Quinn Ewers I have to go off of is the guy we heard in the immediacy of a disappointing loss to Georgia, one where he didn't play well. Whether it's Quinn or Arch Manning, no quarterback that we've spoken to on this roster who's played a game when they lose, they can be a little, not the most gregarious after a loss, right? But after that situation, again, Chip, I'll just repeat what I said when I asked him. I said, Quinn, did you feel like you need to kind of recalibrate? And Quinn said, I guess I did, and then kind of took a pause and said, I played better in the second half, but it was a weird situation. I don't want to repeat what I said earlier, but I have to feel that Quinn's a smart guy, and I think he has a lot of trust in Steve Sarkisian. The same way the Manning family has a lot of trust in Steve Sarkisian because of the way Steve's been able to develop quarterbacks. And I think, Chip, if there's anything that's going to really diffuse kind of what would be, as I mentioned, the worst case scenario, which is Quinn not having a fundamental understanding of why that decision was made. If there's anything that's going to diffuse that, I think it's the faith and trust in Steve Sarkisian, in addition to how long they've been together. And to your point, Quinn, when I got on this beat in July of 2022, you're better equipped to speak to Quinn prior to that. But the Quinn that I've dealt with over the past 14 months, his faith is real. And that is something that he leans on. And that is something that win, lose, or draw, he comes back to. So that as well, I think will play a factor in, as long as the things that we outlined are still there, the trust in Steve Sarkisian, an explanation as to why it happened, Texas can move past this. But again, I just can't emphasize this enough. If there's any not fundamentally truly understanding why the move was made, that to me can linger, Chip. Not in terms of is there going to be a switch? I'm talking about on the field. That, Chip, that can go to any of us, right? If our boss calls us and says, hey, we don't understand why you wrote this or why you said this, and we don't truly understand why it happened, we're going to be a little gun shy next time we go back out there and do that same thing again, right? Not want to repeat the same mistake. So that is just a major concern for me.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I think back to when Tom Herman was the coach and Sam Ellinger, who could play really well. And then there were games where it wasn't there. And you thought, wow, maybe they should put Hudson Card in or something. And it didn't happen. And Texas lost some close games. I get it. And Tom Herman's an offensive-minded guy. He won the Broyles Award as the offensive coordinator at Ohio State in 2014. I thought Steve Sarkisian making the move to sub in Arch Manning for Quinn Ewers, obviously there's a wow factor from Quinn that, oh, wow, he did that. He's willing to do that. And if you are a fire-breathing competitor, you are going to come out this week with laser focus. You're probably going to be sharper than you've ever been because now it can be taken away. And if you're a fire-breathing competitor, then that's how you respond with, I'll show you, I'll show the world, I'll show myself, I will deliver the goods. And I'm sure that's where Steve Sarkisian is hoping Quinn Ewers goes, because they're about to get in to the ring with an opponent that wants to drag them into quicksand, make this game into a game of keep away, where Diego Pavia, who you wrote about today at Horns 24/7, and everyone needs to read that story because it's great insight into Diego Pavia, how he kind of plays like an anaconda and slowly chokes you out, and the things that you can do maybe to remedy it. But one of the best ways to remedy it, Eric, is to get that explosive passing game going. Get off to quick starts like Texas did against Michigan. Got up 24-3. Michigan was like, oh my God, we got to climb Mount Everest, because they don't have the explosive offense. Now, Vanderbilt can be explosive. And Diego Pavia, the guy's just this gritty, grimy competitor who's, you're going to have to drag him off the field to get him to stop competing. And that's where I'm fascinated, because this is a definite crossroad for Texas this weekend. You got hit in the mouth. You were the number one team. Everything was great. Everyone came in for your big moment. All the celebrities, all the recruits. And then you're down 23-0 at halftime, and you got submitted. And where's the fire? Okay, what's this team made of? We know they have they say they have a really good culture. Okay, well, then I'm expecting to see laser focus and fire this week. I mean, is that fair?
Chip, absolutely. You touched on one of the things that I asked players during Monday's availability, and I asked players in the immediacy of the post game. Does this culture that we have been told about almost ad nauseum, incessantly, since Big 12 Media Days last year? I remember Jordan Whittington. This is the quote. When I asked Jordan Whittington, what's the difference between this year, or this year being 2023's team, and teams with Texas past, Jay Witt said, I don't know any other way to put it outside of, we just really rock with each other on and off the field. And that has been something that we've been told week after week after week after week, Chip. I 100% think the culture matters, because this would be a place in my mind where it's easy to point fingers. Last year, as you're kind of on the ascent, Chip, you don't have the expectations. Now, of course, expectations were high on the 40 acres, right, to do something, but they didn't come in as a top 5 team in the nation. They didn't come in the way they did this year. That's when you have those expectations, and then all of a sudden, wow, well, maybe we're not meeting them. We were favored against Georgia. Maybe we're not meeting them. Then that's when the finger pointing can start. Quinn Ewers, benched, albeit briefly, benched. Jaden Blue, someone who even before CJ Baxter's injury was projected to be a big-time impact back. He's going through some struggles. He doesn't get a carry. He was the game's leading receiver, 7 catches, I think 50-something yards, was the game's leading receiver, but doesn't get a carry. The defense, Chip, which managed to hold up really well when the offense was going through its struggles against OU. They got handed several short fields, didn't give OU anything. They got handed short fields against Georgia, tried as they might to hold them out. They couldn't do it back-to-back weeks. It'd be easier for the defense to point the finger and say, all right, we're doing our job. Quite frankly, the fact that Georgia walked away with 30 points is impressive. It should have been more, in my opinion. It's easy to point fingers. That's where the culture matters, Chip. And I'll briefly kind of go into Diego Pavia, because I'm sure you just kind of talk about your Diego Pavia point. Like I said, and go and check it out on horns247.com. I knew my time covering all those G5s would come in handy, Chip. I knew some point it would come in handy and you would be impressed by my little party trick. Of course, I covered Group of Fives for 6 years, covered Conference USA for 5 years. So I was able to reach out to some former defensive coordinators, most notably FIU's, or current defensive coordinators, I should say, most notably FIU's Javon DeWitt faced Diego Pavia twice. The thing that they emphasized, Chip, and having covered Pavia's, first real extended action in 2022 when FIU went to New Mexico State. I can attest to this. He's such a unique player in that he makes, whether it's the wrong play, he makes it the right play. If it's unorthodox, he'll make it right. And one of the things that was stressed to me by the defensive coaches I spoke to said that it's so difficult because you want to teach, fundamentals. And of course, you want 11 players with good football IQ, but you need one or two guys who can just match Pavia's wits out there and just be like, all right, well, why'd you go to the flat? Because that wasn't the defense that was called. Well, I just knew he was going to go there. Be able to match his football IQ and kind of match what he's going to do because Pavia is so unorthodox. He's going to make the wrong play the right play. And do you have players who can match that? Now, in my opinion, Texas does. I think one of them is Jahdae Barron. But of course, we'll see what happens. That's going to lead us into a whole nother discussion as far as the injuries in the secondary. But I'll cap it there, Chip, and you take it in what direction you want to take it in.
Yeah. Well, we might as well move there because way up on the priority list after quarterback issues getting ironed out is Texas dealing with the possibility that Andrew Makuba, who's been one of the best players on the defense this year, unbelievable interception by Makuba against Georgia, goes up high, bats the ball, catches the carom on the way down in Georgia territory. Great momentum play for Texas early in the first or early in the game in the first quarter. And now he's nursing a knee injury. The good news is it's not season ending like Derek Williams' knee injury was a week earlier against Oklahoma after he forced a turnover in that game, forced a fumble. And so, okay, if Makuba, who's questionable according to Sarkisian, but Sarkisian was quick to point out that there is a bye week next week and he wasn't going to rush Makuba back if he can, give the kid more time to recover. He doesn't want to get him out there less than 100%. So now we're talking about freshman Jordan Johnson-Rubel possibly getting some reps behind Michael Taff and Jelani McDonald, who Sarkisian said likely the starter if Makuba can't go. And so that's a lot. And Jordan Johnson-Rubel, look, they got talented guys. I mean, we saw Wardell Mack make one of the best interceptions of the college season. We've never seen him again because he did it in garbage time against Colorado State. So they got talented guys, but it's not like having a veteran out there, Eric.
Yeah, it's really interesting because one of the things that Steve Sarkisian just talked about is the versatility of the defense. He feels the defense is really versatile, and now year 4 under PK. Some of that versatility, you start to really test it if Makuba can't go. And the big thing, Chip, and I do agree with Steve Sarkisian, if by kind of inferring, hey, we've got the bye week right there, you don't want to rush him back. I would much rather have Andrew Makuba for the long haul than potentially put him out there and he's fighting an injury and then that thing gets aggravated, especially as you talked about. We lost Derek Williams for the season. Xavier Filsaime feels like he's destined for a red shirt unless, again, knock on wood, there's another injury and then you have to put him out there, right? But the versatility, it gets interesting. And this is where, I'll pose this hypothetical to you and get your thoughts. Jahdae Barron, we've talked about it a ton. He's having an excellent year. The fact that Jahdae came out during media availability Monday and when asked, hey, do you think you're the best DB in football? He said, yeah, he does think he's one of the best DBs, if not the best in football, right? In college football. He's doing an excellent job at the boundary corner. And Chip, that boundary spot, someone who plays in the run fit a lot, is going to be pivotal against Vandy. Like that, especially with the offense they run, that's going to be crucial. Is it a situation where for one game, you still start Jahdae at boundary, but you play a little more Gavin Holmes, who Gavin Holmes did get playing time early last week against Georgia. Play a little more Gavin Holmes. You rotate Jahdae in with the safety rotation. Let's just say Makuba can't go. So the safety rotation is JJR, Jelani McDonald, and Michael Taff. And then you also have Jahdae Barron. Do you rotate him in a little bit there so he can kind of do some things? Because you can't, in my mind, Gilbo's a lock at the star. You're not going to move Gilbo off of that spot. I think that Gilbo, at least the time he's been on the 40 acres, he's shown that's the spot he's going to play, right? That's the versatile chess piece you have is Jahdae Barron. So do you possibly move him off and play a little Gavin Holmes? I don't know. It feels, again, for a one-game situation, I don't think it's that dangerous, but at the same point in time, what Jahdae brings as someone who is not afraid to stick his, face mask in there, play the run, obviously excellent cornerback, all the great things that he does, it feels like it could be a little bit tricky if you go with Gavin Holmes, who Gavin is a good cornerback in his own right, but certainly not the run defender that Jahdae Barron is.
Yeah, and when we talk option football, the DBs are going to have to get involved, on the edge. So I'm fascinated to see how the defense is deployed for this game, because we saw Pete Kwiatkowski do a really nice job of stuffing Kansas State's quarterback run game a year ago. They came out with a package where you had Jalen Ford in the middle. You had Jahdae Barron at a linebacker level with Mo Blackwell and Anthony Hill up on the line of scrimmage, so that you had really good speed and good tacklers right there on the edge where the quarterback runs could break, because obviously you had Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy in the middle of that defensive line. I think Texas is fine in the middle of the defensive line. And so I'm eager to see what Pete Kwiatkowski has drawn up for this, because Texas's speed needs to be a factor in this. I would also bring in the disruptors on the edge, the bigger guys, the Baron Sorrells, the Ethan Burks, the guys who are going to penetrate and push tackles backward and disrupt, the flow of the offense, because that's a great way to gum up an option attack, is to get penetration and, just force plays where they don't want to go. And let's see what Pete Kwiatkowski has in mind, because this is, the time of possession. Vanderbilt is top 10 in college football. They hog the ball. They're averaging 33 minutes of time of possession. Against Alabama, they held the ball for 42 minutes and 8 seconds. That meant that Alabama had the ball for 17 minutes and 52 seconds, Eric. That's amazing. And if you get sucked into their tempo, it's like going up against a four corners offense in basketball, where you want to run and they're just passing the ball around, milking the shot clock every time, and then getting a good look and making a basket. That's what this game can turn into if you let it. And so I'm fascinated to see how that goes. And Diego Pavia, what a fascinating character he is. I mean, he was a state champion wrestler, was recruited for wrestling and football. And, he's built like a wrestler. I mean, he idolizes Johnny Manziel. He wears number 2 for Johnny Manziel, but he's a lot thicker than Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel is wispy compared to Diego Pavia, who, again, is built like a wrestler and competitive like that. So this is a fascinating matchup all of a sudden.
And Chip, again, having covered Diego back when he was at New Mexico State, this is who he's always been. He has always been that guy who is, tough as nails, just a competitor. And I know we use those phrases like, tough, high IQ, intangible, it's around a lot of players, but it's real with him. That guy who just by sheer will is going to push the guys around him. Mexico State, Chip, not going to make this, the Conference USA podcast, but Mexico State was bad for a long time. All right. You get Jerry Kill, and I'll reference these names because they are pertinent to Texas's game against Vandy. You get Jerry Kill, who certainly is a good coach, went through some health issues at Minnesota. They land him in New Mexico State. He helps change the culture. You get Tim Beck, offensive coordinator. He helps in the way he uses Diego Pavia. And then tight end Eli Stowers. And Chip, these are all players, or players and coaches, who are now at Vandy. Kill is an analyst / special assistant to the head coach. Tim Beck is the offensive coordinator. Diego Pavia, of course, is the quarterback. Eli Stowers is Vandy's leading receiver. So there you go. If you're going to bring in a transfer quarterback, that's how you do it, right? You bring in his entire offensive system. But no, to your point, yeah, Pavia is a gamer, just the way he is. He's a fierce competitor. I've seen, some people kind of bat around on our message board saying that, hey, I think if you hit him a couple times and you make him tap out, you can't, Chip, you don't go from unrecruited to New Mexico Military Institute to New Mexico to Vandy if you're just a kid who's going to tap out easily. It's not how that works. And to your point, you're not a wrestler if you're going to tap out easily. So Pavia is a unique challenge. And like I said, Eli Stowers is going to be an interesting situation as far as, his availability, but certainly someone who's a really talented tight end. And Chip, that's going to play a factor with, some of the situations in the secondary we talked about.
Yeah. Eric, another kind of question is the running back situation for Texas. Quintravian Wisner starts the game against Georgia, gets the carries. Jaden Blue finishes as the leading receiver, but doesn't get a single carry. And then when asked about the running back situation on Monday, Steve Sarkisian said, yeah, we got to get Jaden Blue some carries so that defense doesn't think, okay, 23's in the game, it's pass, pass, pass. The only way you can find out if Jaden Blue has learned and improved after his 2 lost fumble game against Mississippi State is to play him, carry it, give him carries. I'm expecting to see Jaden Blue get some carries in this game against Vanderbilt. How about you?
I am. And Chip, really quick, I said Eli Stowers availability. I meant ability. There's no reason to believe Eli Stowers won't play. So just really quick, I know I misspoke there. I meant ability, not availability. But with Blue, Chip, you and I I remember a couple weeks ago, we were, not to say we're on opposite ends of the spectrum, but you'd kind of thrown out a hypothetical like, hey, do you use Blue more on the perimeter and use Quintravian Wisner more, between the tackles? And my position was, well, that's not going to pass the smell test with Blue because he knows the way that Texas likes to use their backs. And that's going to be a clear sign that, hey, they don't have faith in me. Well, I couldn't have seen a scenario where Blue wouldn't get a carry in a game, right? So, and Blue was candid as saying, hey, of course it's tough to get in a rhythm when you don't get a carry, but Blue, still the consummate teammate, wants to do anything to help the team win. And that running back room, you've seen whether it's Blue, Quintravian Wisner, Jarrett Gibson, CJ Baxter, those guys all support each other publicly on Twitter. So I don't think there's going to cause any, that's going to cause a lack of harmony in that running back room. But you and I think, are both in agreement that Texas won't win a national championship and Texas won't achieve its fullest potential without Jaden Blue reaching his fullest potential, or at least getting near it. It can't be a situation where the only running backs who touch the ball are Quintravian Wisner and then receiver turned running back Ryan Niblett. And I do believe Steve Sarkisian, Chip, I asked him on Monday, that was my question to him. He said following the game that he felt the offense had been in too many third and mediums, right? And I asked him if I felt like, the run game or not be able to kind of get consistent yards from the run game. Yeah, you'll get those chunk plays, get those explosive plays, but kind of those consistent running plays, if that played a factor in some of the third and mediums. And he felt that, hey, the third and mediums are fine. He felt that his offense should convert those at a higher clip. But he also did say that, yeah, the way the flow of the game worked out with Chip, you were there. You heard Steve Sarkisian emphasize this again. He harkened back to his days growing up in California and studying offenses in the Bill Walsh offense, where they chose to throw early and kind of develop a lead and then come back and finish things with the run game. And Steve talked about balance and how balance can mean different things in terms of the run game. I agree with all of those points that he made. However, when you operate that way, Chip, and you, again, saw Jonathan Brooks last year, saw Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson the year prior, you operate that way, that's how things can get out of whack. And it's all of a sudden, Quintravian Wisner is the running back we're using primarily in the first half. The game shakes out the way it does. All of a sudden, you don't have an opportunity to get Blue carries because you're playing from behind, and then the game plan calls for something different with Blue as a receiver. So again, this isn't necessarily me critiquing the formula, because the formula worked up until OU, quite frankly. They were passing early, having a lot of offensive success. The efficiency was working really well for Texas. They were building leads and then able to come back with the run. But we've yet to see that game plan really hit home and hit a home run in SEC play, not named Mississippi State, Chip.
Yeah. He's been, there's no question, he's been throwing to set up the run, and it's worked. And look, they did get the running game going, a couple of explosive plays against OU for Quintravian Wisner, and Jaden Blue looked great catching the ball against Georgia. This is going to be, we heard Steve Sarkisian compare Quintravian Wisner to Jonathan Brooks a week ago, and that was a huge alarm bell that said, okay, Quintravian Wisner's the new guy, because if he's drawing comparisons from Steve Sarkisian to Jonathan Brooks, first back selected in the 2024 NFL draft. So this is another interesting nugget to keep an eye on as Texas heads into this game against Vanderbilt, Eric. Okay, finally, the penalties. Texas has been living dangerously with these penalties. They've gotten away with it. They had 7 offensive penalties against Michigan, 8 against Mississippi State. They were able to overcome them and roll on to big victories against Georgia. They had 4 false starts. Each and every one of those derailed a different drive. Texas was not good enough to overcome those. Gunnar Helm, 4th and 1 at the Georgia 37, false start. 4th and 6, they don't convert. And that was a big one, because obviously Texas was trying to cut it to a one possession game and late against Georgia. But they've been living dangerously, and now it's catching up to them, Eric.
Chip, the biggest concern for me, and Gunnar Helm called it out, actually was on Monday. I couldn't remember if it was post-game or Monday. A lot of these penalties are happening at home. They're not happening on the road. Texas has only had one true road game. Outside of Cam Williams had a little stretch there against Michigan where he got hit with a few penalties. The majority of these penalties are happening at home. That's the troubling thing for me. The Red River Shootout, obviously a Cotton Bowl, while a neutral site game, that's a venue and an atmosphere that certainly, as you and I both believe, it's the best in college football, but one that the players, especially the ones who committed penalties in that game, are familiar with. So that shouldn't be an issue. And you took the words right out of my mouth. I thought that was a crucial one, where they get the break to go 4th and 1. Then it ends up being a false start penalty, and you move that back 5 yards, and all of a sudden changes trajectory of things. So some of those pre-snap penalties, I think you've asked any coach in America, Chip, the penalties that happen in play, face mask, pass interference, holdings, things like that. Not that they encourage them or anything like that, but they'll live with them because, some of them are subjective upon the referee, or you get caught up in gameplay. Sometimes you have to get your hand, getting a guy's mask. You'll live with that. The pre-snap stuff, the encroachments, offsides, line up in the neutral zone, snap infractions, things like that. Those are drive killers. You can't have those.
Yeah, can't have them. Not especially when your margin for error potentially. Now, if Texas comes out and they're throwing it all over the place and they're getting off to a nice start with the passing game, we're still waiting to see what's going on with Isaiah Bond, who, looks like he aggravated the ankle a little bit in the Georgia game. But you've still got explosive guys. You've still got Ryan Wingo. You've still got Matt Golden. And if you go back and watch the game, those guys were open. Quinn either saw him and didn't throw it in time, or, went for the check down or went somewhere else. And that's where you want to see that quick synapse happening with Quinn again, because he was seeing the field so beautifully I keep going back to the Michigan game because of how chaotic that atmosphere was, how fired up that Michigan defense was. And Texas took the ball first, went right down the field, because yours was a surgeon and was a surgeon all through the first half, 8 of 10 third down conversions. So that's what you're looking for. And if that happens on Saturday, then Texas will be in good shape in this game. If it doesn't, and this thing's, a fight in a phone booth, don't let, Diego Manziel Pavia get belief going into Vanderbilt, because here's a couple things and then we'll move on, Eric.
Yeah.
The 2 losses for Vanderbilt were to Georgia State, of all people. Georgia State is 2-4 right now, but they were able to run and pass. They won the time of possession battle. The turnover battle was even. Vanderbilt had 9 penalties in that game for 85 yards. And and then they lost to Missouri. They probably should have won that game. They had a lead, but again, Missouri was able to be balanced. They ran it for 216 yards, 40 times, 5.4 yards per carry. But Vanderbilt 8 penalty flags for 93 yards. So you can't rely on Vanderbilt, self-destructing. Texas needs to take it to them. All right, Eric, let's get to some take it or leave it. You ready?
I am ready, Chip, and we are live, so we'll roll right into it.
All right. So I am going to serve to you.
You will.
Take it or leave it. Number 1, Quinn Ewers bounces back with 250 yards passing and 2 touchdowns against Vanderbilt. Take it or leave it.
Well, Chip, this is one that both of us missed last week. When we talk about Quinn Ewers having a bounce back game, north of 250, at least 2 TDs, both of us missed on that one. So we'll see how we'll fare this go around. I am taking it, Chip. Vandy's defense is a little bit of a misnomer. As you talked about the way Vandy plays football offensively, that certainly keeps their defense off the field. But I don't have as much faith in Vandy's defense as I do their offense. And regular listeners of this podcast, regular watchers of this podcast know I've been squarely in Quinn Ewers' camp. The only caveat, as I said in the beginning of the show, is he's not right. If he's not right, all bets are off. But we've been led to believe that Quinn is as healthy as he's going to be for any football player playing midseason. So, Chip, I'm taking it. What says you?
By the way, I left Quinn Ewers throwing for 3 TDs with 0 turnovers against Georgia.
I misread my own note. Yeah. Okay.
But we should see the best Quinn Ewers we've seen because of all the things we've already talked about. So I too am going to take this, because if we don't see a bounce back with 250 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, then there might be some bigger issues going on. So I will take this as well.
All right, Chip.
All right.
Leave it number 2. Texas wins the time of possession battle with Vandy. And of course, Vandy ranked 9th in the nation in average time possession, averaging right around 34 minutes per game. Chip, take it or leave it.
I'm actually going to leave this because I think Texas can score, and they can score quickly. We've seen them have some, minute 42 drives because of their explosive nature. We've seen Texas lose the time of possession battle and still win the game. So I'm going to leave this. I say Texas does not win the time of possession battle with Vanderbilt, but Texas certainly one of the most explosive offenses in college football. What say you, Eric?
Chip, I'm right there with you. I'm leaving it. I think Texas, if they're going to break out in my mind, it's going to be in a major way. It's going to be some of the explosive plays that we saw in non-conference competition, some of the explosive plays we saw against Michigan, even some of the explosive plays we saw against Oklahoma just after the start of the game. So in my mind, that's how Texas, if they're going to break out of things offensively, that's how they're going to do so. I still think Vandy wins time possession battle. So I'm leaving it, Chip.
All right. And take it or leave it, number 3. Texas has 4 or less offensive penalties. Eric, take it or leave it.
I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it again. I think Steve Sarkisian and company, Kyle Flood, Jeff Banks, because, it's really the offensive line, tight ends. I think they might go old school. And, if we're driving down MLK or, Robert Deadman or any of those streets, we might see those guys running laps around there if they're committed more than 4 offensive penalties at this point, Chip. So I think they're going to hammer that home. I think they're going to be able to avoid crossing that mark. So I am 4 or less. I'm taking it, Chip.
Man, I hate to agree with you on everything this week, but I'm going to take this as well. Again, I'm expecting to see a laser-focused Texas football team. I will take this. Texas has 4 or less offensive penalties. So 4 max, Texas. Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in to this latest edition of the Flagship podcast. Don't forget, Eric and I will recap the Texas Vanderbilt game. We will do it live from the press box at Vanderbilt in Nashville. So be on the lookout after the game for us to go live, just like we are now, with the Flagship podcast recap of Texas at number 25 Vanderbilt, number 5 Texas at number 25 Vanderbilt. Thanks everybody for listening. Please, again, like and subscribe to Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. Feel free to leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to us as a podcast. Until next time, we'll see you over at horns247.com. For Eric Henry, I am Chip Brown. Stay safe and keep the faith.